In this section, we're going to talk about what you do after you have your foundation made. You know what skills, what behaviors you want to focus on. So, how do we equip the students to be able to engage in these right behaviors and be prepared for all the consequences that come with technology? So, we're going to make a plan. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at I am statements. What do you want your students to be able to do uh, when they are behaving correctly? So instead of do nots, we're going to be looking at I am or I can statements. We're also going to be looking at not only what the students will be doing, so what does good behavior look like, we're also going to be looking at what you, the teacher, is doing specifically in your lessons, instruction, activities, classroom routines to support this new behavior or this reinforced behavior. And then the final step is what supports will be in place to have, to be reinforcement for those behaviors as the school year progresses. Just like in classroom management, if you set up a system at the beginning of the year and then you don't stick to it, the students aren't going to stick to it either. So let's look at our first example. Students you're worried that they're going to break something. And so the I am statement, and this is, from the POV of the student, is I am respectful when I use my iPad correctly. We're going back to that school rule of being respectful, being responsible. So that's the school and class expectation. And then the ISTE standard or the ISTE, I am a digital citizen piece is I am alert. We could also go look at the ISTE standards or even dive into Common Core or other standards. I have an example of some technology based I can statements. They're all based on a variety of different standards, ISTE, Common Core, etc. And you can see here in Strand 2 for digital citizenship, you've got I can understand and explain classroom, school, and district rules about responsible use of technology, and that is including in the I will not break it category. Um, and then also I can describe negative, possible consequences of inappropriate use. We have our foundation. We have a rule that is meaningful to both you, and it should be meaningful to the students as well. If they use technology correctly, if they don't break their devices, then access to them will be, continuous. And then we have our school foundation of why. Why is this a rule? Because it is part of our school expectations to be respectful. So let's look at how are we actually going to plan this out. So what will the students be doing? What does it mean for a student to be respectful to their device? Does it mean that they carry their device with two hands? Does it mean that they store their device properly, that they plug it in, that they only use it when they're sitting at their desk? Whatever those rules are, it's going to be different for every classroom, for every grade level. But you need to make sure that you make a list of what it means for the student to be doing that behavior. The next thing that you want to look at is what can you do as the teacher in the lessons, in the instruction, in the activities? How are you going to teach this and create this procedure for your students? Is it going to be something on top of what they already know? If you're listening to this course over the summer, then this is the perfect time to make a plan for next year. And then after that, is it a lesson? Is it a classroom procedure? Whatever it may be. And then the third piece is what can you do through ongoing teaching practices to support that behavior in your students? So for example, if it is we do these three things when we're on the iPad. We carry the iPad with two hands, we keep our best listening ears for Mrs. Taylor, and we always plug in our iPad when we're done. So if those are the three rules, I might do some sort of call and response with my students every single time they get the devices. I would probably be comfortable doing this anywhere from kindergarten, maybe even up through fourth grade. I've seen call and response used really well in the upper elementary school grades. It really depends on your classroom management style, what that ongoing process should go. What I would hesitate and strongly urge you not to do is have punitive consequences for kids failing expectation. And there's a difference between blatant failure, for example, a student throwing the device across the room, versus the student only carried the device with one hand. Those are two very different examples of, um, breaking expectations, and they should be handled differently. And unfortunately, I can't answer that question for you of how should that be handled. It really depends on your school. It depends on your student population. It depends on your parent population. I am not a fan of taking away the devices, but that is my personal professional opinion. And I believe that in most cases, there can be restorative action taken on the student's part to remediate the behavior and to try again. I always equate it to if it was a pencil. If it was a pencil and the student misbehaved with it, would I take away their pencil? No, I wouldn't. So how else can we reteach and reframe, that behavior into what we do want to see in the classroom? So let's look at this as one more example. So students are copying and pasting of writing research notes instead of writing research notes. So this would be a more upper elementary school example. So the I am statement is, I am responsible when I give credit to others. You could even say, I am respectful when I give credit to others. Plagiarism, cheating, there's lots of, circles that we can go out to from the students are copying and pasting instead of writing research notes. You could even model this as a teacher. It is considered plagiarism to steal other teachers' work without giving attribution. It is considered infringement of copyright when you use images that don't belong to you. So this has layers and rings to it that go further out. For this one, we're focusing on the very simple one. I have students that are doing a research project and they're collecting all of this data, but they're literally copying and pasting. They're not writing the summaries that I asked for, and they're not even taking the time to tell me where that information is coming from. So they're not going to be able to cite their sources properly. So the shift that I want to see is that I'm responsible when I give credit to others. So I'm showing that I'm a good citizen because I'm giving attribution to where I got this information from. You're going to see at the end of this course, I'm going to list every single place where all of my resources came from. Is it like a full MLA graduate style works cited? It is not. But everything that I have and where I got it from will be listed at the end. So making sure that I lead by example here. School and classroom expectations for this is to be responsible. And then the Common Sense Media, one of the 6 core topics that we're going to lean on for this particular one is we are critical thinkers and creators. Critical thinkers and creators of their own content, also known as the summary or the project, do not need to copy and paste from others. I am critical thinking. I am creative. I can take existing content and I can re-summarizing it into something else. Is that the fastest way to do it? No. Is it the non-lazy way to do it? No. So I'm not saying that there aren't hurdles along the way, but this is kind of the base of where we come from. It's not just a because Mrs. Taylor said this is the way to do it. We have a really good foundation to these behaviors that we have, and I feel like that makes it helpful for students. So what does that look like? This is a problem that students are having. So I can go back to those 5th grade ICANN statements, which remember are connected to either an ELA standard or digital citizenship standard somewhere. But I can explain fair use guidelines and properly cite copyrighted materials, text, images, videos to give credit to media creators. This is a standard that are in the you know, state standards or Common Core standards. I promise you, if it's not this one exactly, there's going to be a similar standard across any grade level, and it's going to get more specific as students get older. So what will students be doing when they cite their media sources properly? What does that look like? Are they allowed to have a note paper where they're copying and pasting, and then they also need to put in the link and where it is? Are they using Google Docs to properly cite those sources? There's a really cool citation tool inside of Google Docs that they can use to do that. What does that look like? Not just the end product, but but how will they do it? Because you know that if I just tell a bunch of fourth graders, fifth graders to cite their sources and they've never done it before, they're going to be like, what does that mean? I got everything from Google. And then what the teacher can do in their lesson instruction activities. So, do you have a lesson? Do you have content around where you're going to teach them how to do this? And it's definitely part, I mean, you can attach it to almost any topic. Anytime you're learning from something, you can utilize the cite your sources, images, etc. And then after you teach them the initial lesson or the initial string of lessons, what are you going to do through ongoing teaching practices? So maybe having a citation example or a video or a template, something that your students can come back to again and again. So when they're not doing it properly, you can say, hey, I noticed that you didn't cite your sources properly. Whether it's super complicated like in-text citations or something more specific, or whether it's just listing all the websites, where you got stuff. So making that plan, sticking to the foundation of why we're doing this and why it matters, I think is really going to be helpful in building out your classroom expectations, not only around classroom behaviors, but classroom behaviors utilizing technology.